Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code STARDUST to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
Hi, this is Fred Tatasciore, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. The Force is strong with both of them.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we'll be joined by some guests who we will introduce here in just a moment. But this episode will feature our wrap-up of our coverage of Season 3 of The Bad Batch. But before we start all of that, Jay, I want to remind everybody where we can be found around the internet.
You got it, Dennis. We are conveniently found on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is aligned, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, and we are now broadcasting to the galaxy.
For this episode, we are joined by two special guests, Star and Cap. If you listen to the show for any length of time or have heard me talking about armor parties and cosplay friends, you've probably heard these names. Star goes by Star Spangled Comet on Instagram. Cap is known by I'm the Captain at 501. Both of our guests are co-hosts on the podcast Star Wars Stuff. But the chief reason they are joining us for this particular conversation is because they are Hunter and Rosshair in the cosplay world. So Cap is Hunter and Star is Rosshair. And they both have a deep love and passion for this show, making them the perfect guests for this particular discussion. So welcome to Podcast Stardust, Star and Cap.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we could be here.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting to finally be on here and get to talk Star Wars.
And Bad Batch.
And Bad Batch, yeah.
And Bad Batch. Very, very important. So before we get into the discussion, though, could you both tell our listeners just a bit about your personal history with the show and a little bit about your cosplay? So Cap, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so, boy, and I'll keep it brief. I cosplay Hunter. I have built all of his different armor sets over the course of the show, just because I love him so much as a character. And some of the reason for that is because we grew up, we're siblings, so we both grew up watching Clone Wars. We loved it. And when it ended, we thought, oh man, this is our last time with clones. Like, we'll never see them again. And we were super sad. And then Bad Batch came out, and it was just the most exciting thing ever. And then it happened to be about clone siblings. And there's, the oldest, Hunter, I'm the oldest. I immediately identify with him. Turns out Crosshair is actually the baby of the family. Star is also the baby of the family. It was just so much fun. We could kind of see ourselves in them. And we loved them immediately. So it was too fun to follow the show, build all the armor sets. And it's a really special show because of that.
Absolutely. Star, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good summary. I'd say the only thing I'd add in is that, like, this show really was what kickstarted us getting into armor building and cosplay in the first place. So, before, or right as the show was coming out, was the first time that I ever cosplayed Ahsoka. And pretty much immediately after that, started watching The Bad Batch, and we just fell in love with these characters for all the reasons that Cap just said. And so this was the first thing that we had no experience armor building. We had no experience making cosplays from scratch, because with Ahsoka, I bought my first Ahsoka kit. So I'd never made a cosplay in my life. but there wasn't anything with Bad Batch you could buy. And so like this was the first time that we actually started being like, oh my gosh, what if we made it? What if we actually tried? So this is a really special show and a special set of characters for us, because it really is the thing that made us actually get into the making and the actual like cosplay scene. So that was it's really special that way too.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to just say, for our listeners, I know I've talked about the two of you so many times on the show, but if you have not checked out their cosplay as Hunter and Crosshair, you've got to go to their Instagrams, and you can go to mine too, because you can find it there. But just phenomenal, phenomenal cosplays. And the two of you have actually, as you said, gone through each of the seasons and changed everything according to whatever the season was, including the final season where you scrubbed everying. And you were the two that I thought of immediately as that scene played out. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. I know they are.
Yeah, it was, and it was kind of sad too. And that was a fun thing about following the show, like we did with the armor, is like when this happened in the show, we both looked at each other. We're like,
oh,
dang it. Like, gotta scrub it. And we're really glad we did, though. It was,
we are. And you know, it was fun. We got a chance to actually repaint everything before the show actually ended. And so it was fun to have that armor, in line with the finale. Pretty soon after they did it. But you know, for me at least, it was my first kit, because I made a whole new kit for Imperial Crosshair, but it was really surreal
your original
to like scrub the original very first piece of cosplay I had ever made in my entire life. Just gone.
Wow. And just also the side by sides that you both had done with 2021 and then 2024 is just incredible. And just the comparison between the two. So thank you so much for sharing that history, because that really does set us up to go into this retrospective. So Dennis, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, okay. Well, that was some dedication. I'm impressed. I think what you all just said is going to take a little bit of the out of some of these questions I'm about to ask, but we'll start with this. And Cap, I'll let you go first.
Sure.
What was your overall thought, impression, takeaway from season 3?
I loved it. I thought this was a really solid season. I liked season 1 a lot. Season 2, I also love It's Bad Batch, but it's nowhere as good as season 3 for me. So I just thought they set up the season well in those first couple episodes. They really had a bunch of plot heavy episodes all the way through. The character development of, like, you know, Crosshair and Omega specifically was great. And then I loved the finale. So I thought this was an awesome season. Yeah.
Okay. And Star?
I agree. I think for me, it was my favorite season, which makes some sense because Crosshair's my favorite character, and this is the season where we get to see him the most. I also I think the emotional payoff of this season, obviously with it being the last season, was really, it was really high stakes, and I think that they did a really good job that in the finale. So it's hard to, when you love a show, it's hard to see it go, but also really important what kind of note they send it out on. And I thought they did a really good job kind of giving specifically the characters a really good send off in this show. So
Jay, I kind of know what you think about season 3, but what would you like to add to that?
Just the fact that I felt that there was so much more character development than I had actually even anticipated. I mean, just Crosshair in general, his arc was fantastic, and the way that they came back together as a crew, even though they technically, didn't call themselves the Clone Force 99 anymore, and they said that they had broken up. And then with Omega, and just the way that we get to see a little bit more of her own personality, because since she was aside from her brothers for so much of the season, we really got to see how she would do things on her own and how she would be able to survive on her own, but yet still stay true to all of the things that her brothers had taught her. And, of course, there was some amazing action in this and some side kinds of action that I did not anticipate happening. And, it made me laugh. It made me cry. It was just all the feels for me. But what about you?
I'm trying to be careful because I don't want this to come off as a hot take due to the proximity that we still have to the conclusion of the season. but it might be the most satisfying final season of any of the animated shows we've gotten from Lucasfilm for Star Wars. Clearly better than Resistance, but anyway, there's that. Rebels gives it a run for its money. The thing about Clone Wars is we kind of had like 3 final seasons over the course of that show, and then the first 2 were kind of abrupt in the way that happened. But and the other thing about Clone Wars is that it bounced around with the characters that was following and told a whole bunch of stories where Bad Batch pretty much from start to finish was about the Bad Batch and our core group of characters. So I think for that reason, for me, it was probably the most satisfying conclusion. And we got a conclusion for these characters. That's not to say that they can't show up in other stories, but this story had a beginning, middle, and an end. And they didn't do the thing that a whole lot of people were expecting by just killing them all off at the end, since they don't appear anywhere else in the future. So for that reason, I find it to be the most satisfying.
Yeah, and the two of you were convinced, because we had talked about it before the finale. You're like, yep, they're dead. They're all dead.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we were. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but you watch the ending of, Clone Wars in season 7, and it's so tragic. And we were just also, like, when we watched season 1, the notes of how it ends are just so dark. And I was just so convinced. I was like, oh my God, they're dead. They're all dead. Certainly Crosshair's dead. So
yeah, we and were. I also, for me, and like this might be my own like hot take on Star Wars in general, but there's a lot of Star Wars has redemption arcs for their villains or for their anti-heroes, but they almost always involve their death.
Yeah.
Yes.
Almost always. And so for me, like at the very beginning of season 1, like watching Crosshair, he has the chip that's affecting him. So like part of it's not his fault, but then we see him make some pretty clear choices to align himself with the Empire. I was like, there's no way he survives this, because 9 times out of 10, when you have the villainous character in Star Wars, they'll turn good at the end, but they'll die. And that's kind of the things that they do to really cement them as a good guy. And so I was really convinced that he was going to die.
That's actually some good logic. Yeah, I can see why you would think that. Okay, well, let's turn to, and I don't want to make this question too difficult, because when I was making my notes for it, I was having a hard time coming up with an answer. But do you have a favorite episode, or what is your favorite moment if you can't pick an episode from season 3? And Star, I'll let you go first this time.
Great, because I imagine that Cap might have the same one as me, so I'll just steal it before Cap can. My very favorite scene in all of season 3, and maybe the whole show, we'll have to see. I think it's the whole show, is towards the end of the finale, the whole rain sequence where they kill Hemlock and Scorch, and Crosshair shoots the binders off of Omega. And the reunion moment where Omega runs up, sees Crosshair's hand, and gives him a hug, and the 3 of them hug in the rain. That is just my favorite. It just felt like everything tied together, from the imagery of like having the rain, like Camino, having them kind of end where they began the show in many ways, just like seeing, like at the beginning of season 1, episode 1, it kind of ends with people trying to take off in a ship, being stopped by Crosshair, who makes a sniper shot, and having that scene play out again, except this time he's making the sniper shot towards the enemy rather than his brothers. It really just came full circle to the first episode, and it really just showed all of the growth as characters, and Omega and Crosshair. That was my favorite scene for sure.
Good answer. How about you, Cap?
Yeah, you stole mine. But a close second, I think, is the whole episode of The Return, where Crosshair comes back to the squad, just because I thought he would never come back to the squad, and I kind of figured he'd come back at the very end of the show. He's been with the Empire the whole time. Maybe at the very end he'll come to his senses, make a sacrifice play, and die, like we just talked about. And so having him come back part of the way through this actual season was so cool. And then having them, again, with the same kind of full circle imagery, going back to that same planet he'd been on with Mayday before, and yet now he's here with his brothers, and he's trying to kind of keep them safe from this, worm that's out there. and is successful at doing so, where he couldn't, with Mayday having, died in the previous season. I just thought it was so cool. And I love the scene where they're sitting in the snow and they kind of look at each other and they kind of nod, and it's like, okay, all right, we're gonna be okay now. It's just a really familiar feeling too. So yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, I love that episode too, and I love Crosshair's attempt at reconciliation at the end I still remember that very well, where he takes that deep breath and he just lets it all, he's Hunter, I did things. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was being a good soldier. And Hunter doesn't beat him down for it.
Yep.
He said, we've all done terrible things in the past, but that is a great reunion episode. So good answer. I like that one a lot. Jay, how about you? Is it one of these we've already talked about, or do you have another one?
Well, the return is definitely up there, and so is the finale. I mean, they're both just top-notch storytelling. So there you can't go wrong with either one of those. Since we've already talked about both of those, though, I'm actually going to go with Extraction. So I like this one because after we see the battle with the Clone X Trooper, the CX2, Rex and the Batch are looking to escape Teth. And what I like about this, though, is that we get to see Commander Wolf at the end, and he is arriving, and you see that standoff at the very end at the bottom of the two ramps to each one of the ships. And Wolf is really looking at this decision. Do I carry through with these orders that I have, or do I kind of let them go? And he's got these commandos with him too that are not budging because they're waiting for him to basically tell them what to do. And so I just think that this sets up where Wolf ends up when we finally see him in Rebels. And I just think that's so cool. And that's planting the seed, just like it did for Cody, who we didn't get to see, but that's another story. And so it's one of those kind of things where I like that planting of that seed or that breadcrumb so that we can hopefully return to that. But both of those that you all just talked about are absolutely phenomenal. And basically anything with Omega, problem solving and just doing her thing, because I love her so much.
So you all put me in a bind because those were my top three. And now I have to go with something else. It's hard to beat the finale, but I kind of paired the infiltration and extraction because it just seemed like a two-parter when it's all broken down. And then of the return, one of the things I loved about that is the return is it bounces off that episode from the prior season where Crosshair got to know the Commander Mayday, who got killed, and that was kind of the turning point for him. I'll just briefly give some kudos to Juggernaut, just for the reason that I liked all the action in it. I thought it was fantastic the way that they got Hemlock and they brought him into this mission and everything that they did there. The animosity that existed between Crosshair and I'm sorry, they didn't get Hemlock, they got Rampart. I make that mistake all the time. They recovered Rampart so they could get to Hemlock, and they had that barely disguised animosity between Crosshair and Rampart over it. They were just kind of slinging things under their breath at each other and making each other flinch with the way they talked about it. So that was a fantastic one. Okay, this question might be obvious now given the introduction that Jay gave you all, but who was everyone's favorite clone from season 3? So is it fair to say Hunter and Crosshair respectively, or does that change?
That's so great. Yeah, for me it's Crosshair, which shouldn't surprise anyone. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think mine is also Crosshair in this one. I mean, I love Hunter, but I think as the older sibling myself, I just like watching Crosshair actually make the right choices and be like, he came back. No, I mean, really, he comes back. He's taking care of, Omega now. And he's, even at the very end, they're going to be like, okay, let me go into Tantus and you guys go call Rex. I'll make the sacrifice play. And he's come all the way around. He totally understands what he's done wrong. He's willing to die for it. And his brothers are like, no, which I also love. But I think, Crosshair.
Mm-hmm. Jay?
Oh, this is so hard because I too love Crosshair's arc in this. You just can't go wrong with that arc for sure. And there's just so many wonderful things to love about it. And again, with Omega, I count her as as a clone, obviously. So she's right up there. But if I had to really think about and choose, I'm going to say Wrecker. And the reason why is because his unfaltering loyalty and drive to just push forward, regardless of everything else that's going on, is just so underrated. And the fact that he was basically near death, he's like, "Oh, I'm fine." And Crosshair's like, "No, you're not," kind of thing. And it wasn't because he's this big bumbling fool that a lot of people say that he is. It's because he has a big, huge heart, and he is so incredible. And he's not just, the comic relief. And I just think that he is an unsung hero when it comes to so many things that happen in the series in general. So so I'm gonna go out on a limb and just go different and just say, yeah, Wrecker.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to echo. No pun intended. Captain Star.
Is there an echo in here? Yes, there is.
Realized that as soon as it came out of my mouth. I was like, oh,
Nice.
shoot. But yeah, I think Crosshair is the standout from this season. It's a journey that gets started in season 2 and gets completed here. And they don't fall into the trap of the continuous backsliding into old behaviors. And he accepts the help that Omega that gives him with the meditation and everything. And even all that doesn't pay off those techniques necessarily, it pays off in the end with that scene we already talked about where he and Hunter take out Hemlock on the bridge in the rain with that work with Omega. But since we talked about him, I'm just going to give Omega a shout out. She really grew up this season. She grew a little bit every season, but she in past seasons was very gung-ho and all about kind of showing off everything she learned and was ready to head out into the field and use skills that she hadn't quite mastered. She had like real confidence, not bravado in this season. And she put it to good use with her escape from Tantus, with the decision that she made to go back to Tantus, how she rallied those kids, found a way out. One of my favorite lines is when they're trying to figure out who let the Zilla Beast out. And Wrecker, Crosshair, and Hunter stand there and say, is that Echo's work or Omega's? And they all say at the same time, Omega, And so I just really like the way that she developed over the course of this season. And I love that what she had to say to Hunter when it was all said and done, that you all have fought your fight. It's your turn to rest, but this is my fight. I've made my decision. And so, now I'm going to go join the rebellion and I'm going to, move on with this. So we also had a lot of guest appearances in this episode. We had Fennec Shand from Bad Territory in episode 8. Asajj Ventress showed up in The Harbinger, episode 9. Cad Bane was in episode 10. Emperor Palpatine made an early season appearance. Grand Moff Tarkin kind of bookended the series this year. Senator Chuchi came back. What was everyone's favorite guest appearance this season? Cap, you can go first.
Probably Ventress because of the fight scene. So I love Ventress. It was nice to see her after Clone Wars because I loved her in Clone Wars too, and seeing her again was really fun. But man, that fight scene was so good. I literally finished that episode and watched it like 3 more times. Yeah, so yeah, probably her.
Yeah, she really tossed them around. That was fun to watch.
Yep.
Star?
I don't know if it count like.
Just go with it.
Okay, it's not one of the ones you mentioned, but
Scorch.
Oh no, I was gonna say Fee, because like Fee, she's not like a guest from another place, but like she didn't feature heavy in this season at all. But I really I really like her, and I really liked her from season 2. And by the time we got all the way to like Juggernaut, and we hadn't seen her in this season, I was like, oh man, I'd be kind of sad if we, end this show and we never get to see Fee again. And kind of get to see, what she's up to. So I enjoyed seeing her. I really like what they did with her character.
Yeah. I liked it when she met Crosshair and said, any friend of Brown Eyes is a friend of mine. So
yeah. And the nice description of the sparkling personality was a great line.
So. Yes, very much so. Jay, how about you?
Oh gosh, Fee is undeniably awesome. That's for sure. I will also go with Asajj just because she's definitely one of my favorite characters ever in Star Wars, period. And it was just so wonderful to see her in action. As you said, Cap, that she just really laid it to them in that fight, and that was absolutely phenomenal. And the thing of it is with animation, the animation just keeps getting better and better and better. And these fight scenes just continue to become more phenomenal as well, and this is just proof in the pudding that that was the case.
Yeah, it
So,
was
yeah, I'm gonna go with
Yeah.
Asajj.
Yeah, that she's hard to beat. I'm kind of jumping ahead to a question I have in a bit. The only thing that just keeps nagging at me is that I would have liked a bit more of a hint on the explanation about how she's still alive at this point.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know they've told us that those type of things are coming in some other form. We don't know what, if it's going to be a book, a comic, another show, or what the situation is. But as cool as it was to see her, it was hard to get past but how are you here? question the
Right.
entire time she was on screen. The thing is that Cad Bane's appearance was, it was cool to see him, but it was kind of disappointing because he didn't really
Yep.
It
do a
was.
whole lot. He only rounded up that kid and delivered it to the Empire. Uh,
Mhm.
Emperor Palpatine was awesome because he gave us clues and hints and about Project Necromancer, and kind of was a link to from there to the Rise of Skywalker, which I really liked. Anytime Grand Moff Tarkin shows up and browbeat someone is fantastic. But I really like seeing Fennec Shand come back
Mm.
this time around. I think she maybe had the most action out of any of these guest appearances or side appearances, whatever you want to call it, out of this. And we need more of her. I want
Yeah.
to see her
Agreed.
show up in other projects. Okay, there are some unresolved issues. I was just hinting at one with Asajj Ventress. We don't know how she came back. Some others are, whatever happened to Sid? Last we saw of her, she was betraying the Bad Batch, and she never got her comeuppance that we know of. Commander Cody is still missing. We don't know exactly what happened to him. But is there any of these issues or others that I haven't mentioned that are nagging you that weren't resolved by the end of the season? Star, you can go first.
Yeah, I think there's a couple, and I would say, the way I look at unresolved issues sometimes is like, oh, maybe this is a fun Easter egg for a future project.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times I don't feel like, oh, I'm so disappointed they didn't answer it in this show. Maybe they'll answer it later. But there were some things at the end of the show where I was like, wow, I really wish I knew more how this worked. Or like where did this go? Like for me personally, some of the unresolved things was like, you mentioned Cody, but also like also Wolf, like is he like we have the idea that like maybe he's second guessing, but like, like where does that come in? Because we didn't see it in this one. So like are we gonna see it in another project? Like we can make the mental jump that he at some point like gets got by Rex or whatever. But I would have liked to know a little bit more about that. I think another one for me, kind of a big question about the CX clones. Because although there's like a little bit of explanation in season 3, at the end of the finale, we suddenly see that there's more than just this one, and they all seem like they have these like special, I don't know, these special like skills that they
Abilities,
each
yeah.
have, and it felt like, wait, I didn't know that they had like, I don't know, like one of them has 2 knives. Like I didn't know that there was a certain clone that was being made into this. And so I had some ideas of how I thought the CX clones worked watching season 2 and 3. And like, oh, the one you follow mostly is a sniper and is just kind of doing normal clone stuff. But then when you see like one of them has got this like big lance and another one has swords, and I was like, oh my goodness, I feel like I need more explanation of like where did these clones come from? Who's training them? What's their previous training? Like who are they? So I felt like that to me was a little bit of an unresolved like setup, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. So lots of, I guess, clone stuff. And then I think probably the other one I'd bring up is the unresolved to me about like who is Emery and where did she come from? Because we know she's a clone, but I think I didn't understand quite watching the show. I thought we'd hear a little bit more about like, oh, she was specifically made to be Hemlock's assistant, or like some like kind of tie with her, and I was left wondering like where she came from. So a lot of cloning questions from me.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a lot of fertile territory that they can tell new stories in.
Yes.
With a lot of those things.
Definitely. Do you think that the CX clones, because Dennis brought this up when we were talking about the finale, is that they were kind of like Bad Batch 2.0? You know, you mentioned that one was a sniper, and then instead of one knife, they had two.
Yep.
And then there was one that their helmet just weirdly, oddly resembled Tech's.
Yep.
If you looked at the goggle kind of perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm with you. The CX clones were kind of an unresolved issue. But did that cross your mind in terms of the Bad Batch 2.0 with them?
I think kind of. I think what more crossed my mind with them, because like I thought that the CX clone we followed was going to be Tech. That was my theory, and it turned out not being true. So I think for me, like what more crossed my mind was like, are they other commandos? Like we've had a hint of seeing Scorch. Like, are these other commandos that we're familiar with? Like, I don't know, because I know that they're they've gone through this reconditioning. They're kind of brainwashed clones, so like that makes sense. I just trying to figure out like, did they have special abilities? I don't know, because I feel like in season 1 we're told that there's only 5 defective clones that are around per Camino, so CX ones couldn't be more defective ones. So I don't know. Yeah, that's just kind of a big question, I think, in my head.
No, that's totally fair. I've often likened the CX clone training to the Inquisitorius of the clones. You know, they take clones that are basically remade into these assassins and whatnot. But yeah, for me, I would say the CX clones was one. Emery definitely was another one for me. I would definitely say that for sure. And Cody, yeah. And I kind of want to know too, where was Gregor during all of this stuff? Like, was he already working at the Power Sliders restaurant and we just don't see him? Because he's never mentioned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cap, did you go?
No, I didn't. And I'll only briefly kind of throw this in here. I think my big unresolved issue may or may not be an issue. And it's not a complaint, but it's, what about Rex and Echo and, just all like this clone rebellion idea? Is the clone rebellion over now? Or, to me, I'm just like, okay, listen to this, Lucasfilm, but like make a whole show or something about like the clone rebellion. There's so much material there. Like, what's Rex doing now? And how about Echo? And like, like, so if they go somewhere with that, all of those storylines that were kind of hanging, that would be perfect, that they kind of artfully set this up in the Bad Batch. And it's okay that they exist as cameos to me in the Bad Batch. That's fine if it just is how it is. But it felt like they were setting up a lot. They had Rauchuchi in here, and like so much politics, and then that just sort of like didn't entirely follow through. So I just hope there's another project. So I think that's my only unresolved piece.
You sure you don't have my notes? Because that was like the next thing on my list. Yeah, because I deliberately left that one off because I was always going to talk about. Yeah, I'm with you there, and we can kind of blend this into the last question I have as we're starting to wind down here, which is, I want to see what happens next with Rex and Echo as they round up these clones. It sounds like some of them are being settled on Pantora. We've got a bunch of them that are retiring to Pabu, but it doesn't seem like this is the end of it. And how does Rex get from here to where we see him in Rebels? And, where he really is retired and, Boopa Sling or whatever they called it out there on the flats. But how about the rest of you? Is there a different project? Is there another project you want to see that springs forth out of this? Because this did spring forth out of the Clone Wars, and I like the idea of another show spring forth out of this. Cap, you just gave us this one. Star, how about you? Is there another show you want to see to follow this up?
I think definitely more clone stuff. Like I'm just gonna jump on what Cap said and just say like kind of the things that I said were unresolved. I feel like those could all be really well explained in a good old Clone Rebellion show. CX clones, Wolf. I mean, the whole 9 yards. That'd be really fun. Beyond that, it would be really cool to see Omega in the Rebellion.
Yes.
Whether that's a whole nother show or just her showing up in future projects, that's something I'm really excited for. Especially if she gets to reunite with Hera. I mean that's perfectly set up at the end of the show. It's like, oh, off goes Omega. Let's see her in the rebellion. And that's something I'm really excited to see.
Yeah,
Be really
for
surprised
sure.
if we didn't.
I'd
Jay, how
like to
about you?
think she's been sorry, yes, thank you. I'd like to think she's been with us the whole time and we just never knew it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Kind of like when the ghost shows up in places like The Rise of Skywalker, and Exegol and that type of thing. So she'll just kind of show up. But how do you both feel about the idea of now that we have had like Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Clones?
Oh yeah. Oh, that we need that. That would be it must
Yeah.
have.
Well, and that
Mhm.
would be a perfect way to address some of these continued questions. And
Well, and to be fair, look, I mean, they had Cody disappear. They set up this whole tension between Wolf and Rex, didn't address it, set up the political situation with, everything on Coruscant, and they did not conclude any of that. I would be super surprised if they never did anything with that. So it may not be a whole show about clones, but they're going to do something with that. That's too many intentionally loose ends.
Mhm. No, I agree.
Yeah, for me, I need to know what happened to Asajj. So I need that series.
Yes.
Yeah.
And whether it's her teaming up with Quinlan Voss to establish that path where they're rescuing Force sensitives, whether she goes on to find other answers, get some sort of revenge for Dathomir somewhere along the way. I don't know who against that would be, but okay. But I definitely want to see more of her and get those answers as how she came back. And, whether that's in another Tales type of show or in a sequel series to this. So
Mhm.
any other thoughts, everyone, before we wrap this up?
This is a great show. Everyone
Yeah.
should watch it multiple times.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, this is the show that really brought us back, brought us into cosplay and really, to me, just like, I mean, it spurred me to rewatch all of Clone Wars again.
Yeah.
At least once. Now I'm on my second watch through since the show started.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's a great show. I think it's some of the peak Star Wars animation that we got to see. Not just
100%.
storytelling, but also animation wise.
Mhm.
We've got to see some beautiful changes and additions to the Clone Wars style animation that has just come a long way. And it's this show really is a treat for anyone who really likes Clone Wars. So
Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Yeah, and the last thought I have on it is simply just well done by Dave Filoni and Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbin. That they ended this show when they did, and they didn't milk it for a fourth season. They had a story to tell. They told it, and kind of what we were saying earlier. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they didn't just give it a fourth season because people wanted to see more of it. You risk diluting the show when you do that. And so they gave us the ending that this all deserves and told the story they need to tell. So good job.
Yeah, agree.
Well, Star, Cap, thank you so much for joining us for this. Before we wrap everything up, you want to remind everybody where they can find everything that you do.
You can find us. I think you still have a TikTok, right?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, we both
Instagram.
have TikTok and Instagram. Mine is I'm the Captain 501.
And mine is Star Spangled Comet.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and this look back at season 3 of The Bad Batch. That was a lot of fun. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. And if so, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button to Podcast Stardust on your podcatcher of choice. I'd like to remind you can find all episodes of the show over on retrozap.com, which is home to several other great podcasts covering everything from the MCU and DC to Dune, Star Trek, and a whole lot more. As always, we greatly appreciate your 5-star ratings and reviews on whatever podcatcher you use that supports such ratings and reviews. And it means a lot to us when you share the show and your favorite episodes on social media with your friends. So speaking of that, Jay, I want to remind everybody what those contacts are one more time.
Absolutely. We are very conveniently and easily found on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust. And if you want to check out some of the other fun things that we have a Pinterest page with a whole bunch of boards to check out. And we also have 2 YouTube outlets. So we have our regular YouTube channel and our YouTube music channel. So head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share. We would love that. And if you want to chat with us in real time, we have a room on the Retrospective Discord server. So the link to that will be in our show notes, as well as the link to our TeePublic store, where we are also teepublic.com/user/podcast stardust. So you can get to us either way. And we do have 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of fun stuff. So if you need some new swag, sweatshirts, t-shirts, tote bags, and the like, head over to TeePublic. And if you also are in need of a lightsaber, we have a great referral for you. So go to sabermasters.com, where you can pick up a lot of different kinds of lightsabers, and they are awesome battle quality lightsabers. And if you do go to sabermasters.com and you check something out and you do decide to get that, make sure when you go to checkout, you hit the code Stardust, and that will save you an extra $10 off. And it also helps to support the show. So once again, that link is in our show notes. So why don't you let everybody know, Dennis, where else they can find your projects and what else you have going on in your podcasting world?
So my wife and I are talking Star Trek over on Warp Trails, which is exclusive to the Retrospective podcast feed, which is available pretty much on all the various podcatchers. We are wrapping up our coverage of the 5th and final season of Star Trek Discovery. And then we are looking forward to the 5th and final season, which I'm really going to miss, of Lower Decks coming up later this year. So if you really want to find all of our coverage, just go to retrospective.com and you can find all of our previous episodes covering previous seasons of Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, and Strange New Worlds. So, check that out. Jay, what's the latest in the world of cosplay?
All right. Well, as we were just talking about throughout the episode, you can find me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And you can catch me as Hera, Ahsoka, the fourth sister, and as well as my original Mandalorian concept based on Tahiri Vela and some other fun things. So I've got a appearance coming up on June 1st in Medina, where actually Vanessa Marshall will also be appearing that day. And so if you want some details about that, just hit me up in my stories, or you can DM me and I will give you all the deets.
Look at you sneaking a little sky stalking in there.
Hey, there you go.
So on Friday's show, we'll be getting into Star Wars news. And then on Monday, we are taking a look at The Phantom Menace #1. It's a 25th anniversary comic coming from Marvel. All right. Well, on behalf of Cap, Star, Jay, and myself, I'm Dennis. Thanks for listening to episode 732 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Until next time, may the Force be with you.